Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Welcome everyone for the Dhamma Abhidhamma. We are continuing with the consciousness, the Chitta. We have discussed so far the Chittas with roots. The two kinds of roots or rooted Chittas in the dynamics, on the dynamics of greed, hatred, delusion, and non-greed, non-hatred, non-delusion. We designated them as wholesome, unwholesome. We discussed the unwholesome side first, because obviously unwholesomeness is what is most powerful within us than the wholesome. The chittas, 8 chittas rooted in greed, we discussed. Now these chittas can arise any moment in our life, while watching a film, while taking your meal, while talking with your neighbor, while discussing a family matter. These chittas rooted in greed can arise, and rooted in hatred can arise. We know now chittas can arise being prompted by others, induced by others, or without any prompting. Chittas can arise based on greed, hatred, and delusion. Anywhere, anytime, these chittas can arise within us as the reactions for the situations. And every time these chittas arise unknowingly to us, there is a strengthening of greed, hatred, and delusion within us. Now, the main focus of these 3 unwholesome roots is to extend the journey of samsara. That's the ultimate goal of these unwholesomeness, to extend the journey of samsara, or to generate unpleasant, painful products of resultants. Unpleasant, painful resultants are the productions of generating that greed, hatred, or delusion. And we also discussed greed and hatred never function together. When there is an attachment which is caused by greed, hatred is not there, because hatred is basically fighting back or attacking. It is not an attachment, it is an attacking. So when there is attachment, the attack cannot happen, right? It's a practical knowledge. So hatred and greed are mutually exclusive. That's what we said, mutually exclusive. They are separately arising. And also we discussed none of these unwholesome roots of greed and hatred cannot manifest without the support of delusion. Without the support of delusion, those 2 roots of greed and hatred cannot arise. So behind the veil of greed, what is there hanging? The delusion. Behind your anger, what is there? The delusion. So delusion eventually is the mother of all the unwholesome roots. That's something we talked about. Then we talked about the wholesome roots: non-greed, non-hatred, and non-delusion. The wholesome roots. What is wholesome? Wholesome is nothing but help us to get rid of misery, get rid of suffering. That's the ultimate goal of wholesomeness. And driven by these wholesome roots, we usually engage in sharing, in meditation, in helping others, in veneration, anything good. Remember, when I say the things that are good, it doesn't mean the exhibition itself. Things can be exhibited as good, but within there could be ulterior motives like fame, like, you know, all sorts of ulterior motives, worldly ulterior motives, mundane ulterior motives. People do good to become famous, to be known among others as someone good. Yeah, all sorts of ulterior motives are there. Now, these ulterior motives are not wholesome. So, apparently wholesome is not accepted in in Abhidhamma. What matters is whether your consciousness is based on non-greed, non-hatred, non-delusion. In other words, based on selflessness or generosity, based on love, or based on wisdom. Now, when the wholesome consciousness that you maintain while you are doing something good is what matters more than the wholesome action itself. When you are feeding a bird, when you are giving some food to a beggar, or when you are offering a dana to Buddha and the Sangha, doesn't matter. What matters is they matter to a certain extent, but mostly what is important is what kind of consciousness you are maintaining. Now, these are the 6 kinds of dynamics, roots that create either unwholesome or wholesome results, painful or pleasant results. Now, today, we are going to talk on resultants. And also, there are chittas. We are going to talk about 18 types of chittas. Now, these chittas are basically called rootless. Rootless. What are why they are called rootless? Because they are devoid of greed, hatred, delusion, and non-greed, non-hatred, non-delusion. Are they happening within us? Yes, they do. They are happening within us. So it is better we learn about them. So let's go to the slides. Hope you all can see this. So consciousness part 3, rootless chittas. Now keep in mind, when I say rootless, it means they are devoid of greed, hatred, delusion, non-greed, non-hatred, non-delusion. Basically, they are devoid of these 6 dynamics, 6 roots. Rootless chitta. Rootless means devoid of any wholesome or unwholesome roots. We just talked about this, right? Wholesome, alobha, dosa, moha, non-greed, non-hatred, non-delusion. Yeah. and unwholesome, lobha, dosa, moha, greed, hatred, delusion. So these 6 roots, as I was saying, are the dynamics, are the manifestations behind our good or bad receivings of the life. Whatever you receive, do you have any authority over it? No, you don't. I don't have any authority over what I receive in this life. So we call them vipaka, right? We call them the resultants. Usually we have this idea that when something bad is happening, what do we call it? Oh, my karma. This is my karma. Usually a Buddhist would say, this is my karma. Actually, it is not literally correct. Literally, it should be said, this is a vipaka of a karma. This is a vipaka. This is the resultant. Karma is just happened. It is there somewhere in the past. Now, there comes the resultant, the vipaka. Do you have any authority over it? Can you control it? No way. It is happening. It is a happening. It is not a doing. So it is not a karma anymore. Because if you say it is a karma, it means it can give results. It can create further results. Vipaka cannot create further results. It is over. Just like you have eaten something. Do you say what you have eaten, the food already? Can you say what you have eaten again, the food? No. It is no more food. You cannot eat it anymore. That's it. It is done. The karma is done. The vipaka is what is happening to you, and it is not a doing, and it will not give further results. That's it. It is done. So anyway, this rootless consciousness, or in Pali we call it ahetuka chitta, are 3 as groups. They are the unwholesome resultants, akusala vipaka, wholesome resultant, kusala vipaka, and also there are 3 types of chittas called functional consciousness. Yeah. Now, these functional consciousness can be say it is neither a potent karma nor a result of karma. It is something called a mere happening. A mere happening, it is not a result from the past, or it is not a karma which will give results. It is just mere happening. These are the types of chittas called rootless, ahetuka, without roots. Now, in this scenario, I have to extract from a future lesson. That lesson is the process of the chitta or chitta process. That means when something comes in contact with any of the sense doors, right? That contact being permanently established within you, right? Then how do you react to that contact? And that reaction, how does it generate the karma for you? Or how come a karma is generated within you? In the Abhidhamma, minutely defined way of explaining. So, according to this theory of chitta process, there are 17 thought moments. Each chitta process contains 17 thought moments. Now, mind you, this is a lesson, full-blown lesson, which is going to be discussed in our future lessons. I had to drag this because some of it are relevant to this lesson, right? Just for the time being, keep in mind there are 17 thought moments in a thought process, a singular thought process. 17 thought moments. Now, a thought moment is called in Pali Chittakana. Chittakana. It is the shortest moment of time period, shortest period of time in this existence, right? Just an example the Lord Buddha gave to indicate how brief a thought moment is, that at the speed of the blinking of your eyes, or at the sound of the snap of your two fingers, there can be thousands and thousands of thought moments to arise and vanish. To arise and vanish for thousands and thousands of thought moments in a brief period of time that happens in the blink of your eyes or in the sound of the snapping of fingers. Thousands of thought moments arise and die. So can you imagine when we say a thought moment? Now, such thought moments are 17 in a thought series, in a cognitive process, right? Now, this thought process, this is important, beginning with something called bhavanga. Can you see this box? Atita bhavanga, bhavanga chalana, bhavanga upacheda. This is something you have to concentrate here. Bhavanga, literally, now mind you again, don't worry about if you don't understand or if you feel a little bit confusing, because, we are going to discuss this with details in the future. Just for a slight understanding for this lesson, for the sake of this lesson. Bhavanga is literally translated, it means mind continuum. Mind continuum. In other words, bhavanga is the mental door or mind door. In another sense, for a clear understanding, the bhavanga is the undercurrent of the mind without the interruption from the objects via the sense doors. Objects via the six sense doors: eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and mind. During the Buddha's time, today, and as long as these human beings exist in this earth, exist in this body, all the thoughts can generate. These thoughts generated via the six sense roots or six sense doors, the origin points of our mind, the origin points of our mind is nowhere else but in the six sense doors: eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and mind. Right? Now, if there is no any interruption from these six sense doors, what happens to your mind? How does the mind exist? That mind exists in the form of bhavanga. When you are fast asleep, dreamless sleep, like the Hindu Vedic teachings say, the sushupti, the dreamless sleep. In that dreamless sleep, in that deep sleep, how does your mind exist? It exists in the form called bhavanga. It's the mental continuum. Now, this happens in the dreamless sleep, but during the day, time and again, or in between these 17 thought moments, there is a moment called bhavanga. That means, if, let's say, if a contact happened to your eye, that is the origin point of the thought process. So that thought process is designated, named as the thought process of the eye. Let's say that thought process finishes at the 17th thought moment, then before the next thought process to happen, based on any other origin point out of these six doors: eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and mind, there is a thought moment called bhavanga. That buffering is there, a buffering. Of course, it is not visible to us, it is not obvious to us, right? That buffering, that bhavanga moment is not obvious to us. This is obvious for meditators. They saw this. So the bhavanga thought moment is there even while we are talking, walking, alive, and I mean, in the waking hours of the day. So it is absolutely clear while you are deep sleep, in the susupti, in the dreamless sleep, the bhavanga is what is happening with it. That continuity. While in the day, in our waking hours, also time and again the bhavanga comes in. So what is bhavanga? What the bhavanga is, the mental or the mind door, or the bhavanga is the consciousness in its original form. That's the bhavanga. When the life ends, what happened? Bhavanga stops. Bhavanga stops at the moment called Chuti-chitta, death consciousness. There the bhavanga stops. That means life stops. You can stop thinking, your life never stops. But when the bhavanga stops, that's it. You are no more. Understood? So bhavanga is there in the beginning, right? Let's say you are sleeping in a home which has 5 doors: eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and my body. Let's say five doors. These 5 doors, like eye, ear, nose, tongue, and body. Now someone comes to a particular door and knocks. What happened? You are fast asleep. You wake up and you look for which door was disturbed by someone. Which is the door? Which is the door that got disturbed? Which is the door that got knocked? You search for it. We call it in Pali Panchadvara Vajjana Chitta. This is being discussed again, right? Just to clarify. This is the door. Pancha means five, Dwara is door, Avajjana, contemplate. Which door got that? You are inquiring about the door out of these five, right? Now then, after that, there comes the series of thoughts, right? Now here, what I explained is there. Please read. Atita Bhavanga. Forget about this red box, right? Because you are going to learn about it, and I just explained what it is. The Bhavanga is what is the origin or before a sense consciousness, before a thought process arises. What is there? That is Bhavanga, right? Bhavanga, Bhavanga, factor of life, literally can be translated. Life continuum, basic or indispensable condition of existence. Yeah. As long as Bhavanga is there, you are alive. Once the Bhavanga stops, that's it. Your existence is no more. Yeah. So it is an essential condition for continued subjective existence, which is obvious, dreamless sleep, or in between the stimuli. What stimuli? Contacts for your sense dose, contacts for your origin points of thought processes, origin points of your mind, we can say, right? So, mind is one, very clear. And what is mind? Mind is knowing. But this knowing cannot happen without the help of the sense dose, right? Without the help of the sense dose, that knowing cannot happen itself. So, in that sense, there are six kinds of minds or six kinds of consciousnesses. Now, what happens when something attracts or something contacts one of your sense doors? As I said, first happens the Panchadvara Vajjana Chitta. That means five door adverting. Your mind check or direct to the door where the object appears, to which the object got contact with, right? That is the five door adverting. After that contact, after that contact, the real consciousness arises. Real consciousness in the sense, if the contact happened at your eye, we call it eye consciousness. If the contact happened at your ear, that means a sound appeared. We call it ear consciousness. If the contact happens at your tongue, we call it tongue consciousness. If the contact happens at your nose, we call it nose consciousness. The sensitive factors in your nose is contacted with a smell. Based on that contact at the nose, we give the name for the thought process, the nose consciousness. If the contact happens with your body, we call it body consciousness. Yeah. If the contact happens to your mind itself, to the mind door. We call it, of course, the mind consciousness, mental door consciousness, mind door consciousness. But in this 17 thought moments, the mind or consciousness is explained separately. So only about the pancha vijnana, five sense consciousness. Now out of these five, one of the five is to happen. One of the five. Either the eye consciousness, ear consciousness, nose consciousness, tongue consciousness, or the body consciousness. Yeah? But as a whole, they call it five sense consciousness. Now, this is just to understand that, okay, a visible object has appeared, a sound has appeared, a smell has created the contact, a taste has created the contact, or a touch to the body has happened. This is that consciousness is just to recognize, just to understand that it is a contact to this particular sense door. Now that understanding, that knowing is not complete. That for that complete understanding, other steps must be there. What is that? Receiving consciousness. That object must be received, must be accepted. Then investigating consciousness. That object must be investigated. Investigated in the sense what? Investigated in the sense that whether it is pleasant, unpleasant, everything, or whether it is something known to me, yeah, all these are investigated. Then comes the determining consciousness. Okay, this is it. This is what I see. This is what I smell. This is what I hear. This is what I taste. I have tasted this before. This is same thing. Determining consciousness. These are the steps that complete your knowing of an object. Yeah. First, the mind check for the door where the contact happens. Then that particular sense impression or sense consciousness arise based on a particular door, eye, ear, nose, tongue, body. Then you receive that object, you investigate that object, and you determine that object. All right? That understanding is enough for this lesson. Of course, we explain again, Panchadvara Vajjana Chitta. Now, just imagine, even Buddha's mind would do this. Even Arahant's mind would do that. Even a professor's mind would do that. Even an uneducated mind would do that. Anybody's mind, when there is a contact happen, what does it do as the first function? The first function is to check for the door, the check for the origin point of that sense impression. That's what the mind does. Now, this is just a function. This is not a resultant. Is it a resultant of the past? No, it is not. Not yet. We don't know anything. It is just the mind check for the particular door where the impression happened, where the contact happened. As I said, somebody is sleeping in a home, sleeping in a house. He's in a deep sleep, let's say. Someone knocks on a door. He wakes up, his mind is open, aware now, and he looked for which door it was open. It was knocked. Which door got the knock? Pancha Dwara Avajjana. Adverting to the five doors. Right? So keep in mind, this is just a function. Does it have any result? It has no results. It is not a kind of a karma. It is just a function of the mind. It is just a function, a mere function, a mere action without result. This is something we have to keep in mind about this chitta. Panchadvara Vajjana Citta. Five door cognition, five door adverting. Yeah, you can read this. What is most significant here that you have to keep in mind is the last one. It is mere function, turns or pays attention, avajjana, to whatever object is presenting itself at one of the five sense doors. This is what is important here for you to understand about the chitta. Panchadvara vajjan chitta. See, Abhidhamma that define our cognitive process to such a minute, such a briefest function of it. Yeah. So it goes to the very beginning of a cognitive process. It says, as soon as a sense impression or a contact that happens to your eye, ear, nose, tongue, and body, what happens is your mind turns to the door where the impression happened. That's the first function. Yeah. Then after this first function, then comes what? Then comes the particular consciousness, whether it is born in the eye, in the ear, in the nose, in the tongue, or in the body. When I say as a whole, the eye, we know, we are aware that not our entire composite eye is what is seeing the visible objects. Just the sensitive part of the eye is attract what is visible to us. Just the sensitive part of our ears attract the sounds. Now, this is where the consciousness originate, begin. So, using that beginning point or origin point of the consciousness, entire process of chitta is designated as that consciousness, like eye consciousness, ear consciousness, nose consciousness, tongue consciousness, body consciousness. Yeah. Now, this thought process is yet to begin. Initially, it is just an impression. Okay, knowing an object. It is just a knowing. A visible object has appeared. Just knowing. The sound has appeared. He doesn't know anything about the sound yet. For understanding that sound completely, for knowing that sound completely, there are other steps to go, right? We have discussed it right now, by now. So second point, it is the mere arising of sense impressions, that it is seen, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, without any clear identification of the object, right? Then comes the receiving consciousness, where you accept that object to your inner circle, to your mind. This is where the mind is involved. I is just object, or I mean, just the door, just the origin point. Mind is doing the job of accepting that or taking that object to your system. This is the receiving consciousness. You receive it. Yeah. We call it in Pali Sampatichana Chitta. Then the investigating consciousness. It examines the object that had just been cognized by the sense consciousness. Examining. In that examination, you further understand what exactly is going on in this object that you initially cognized. Now, these chittas, what are they? Panchadwara Vajjana Chitta. That means five-door adverting consciousness, understanding of the door that an object has come to you. Which door? Yeah. Then that sense impression or that consciousness which happened on a particular door. Chakku vinyana, sota vinyana, ghana vinyana, jihva vinyana, kaya vinyana. That sense impression or consciousness that originate based on that object in those particular doors. Then you receive it, that sense impression you accept, you investigate, right? These are the points important for this rootless chittas. Now, here are the rootless chittas. Unwholesome resultant, akusala vipaka. Now, first concentrate on this, unwholesome resultant. Keep in mind, this chitta is not unwholesome. This chitta is not unwholesome. Then what is unwholesome? Object is unwholesome. The object that received is painful, unpleasant, troublesome, disturbing. Since that object attracts to you, since that object came to you because of a past karma, we call that chitta arises based on that painful object, also unwholesome. Otherwise, this chitta is neutral. This chitta has not something you created. It is something originated because of a particular object which is painful that came to you because of the energy that you generated in the past as a karma result. Now, when the results come into you, especially on the unwholesome side, Buddha doesn't explain here, or Abhidhamma doesn't clarify any sort of rooted resultants for the unwholesome karma. Unwholesome karma has no rooted resultants, only the rootless resultants. But the last lesson, if you happen to concentrate, if you happen to listen to it, in the last lesson we talk about the rooted resultants of the wholesome karma. Wholesome karma has rooted resultants, also rootless resultants. But the unwholesome karma has only rootless resultants. Maybe the reason is unwholesome karma is basically always based on a singular result. Yeah. I mean singular root. Based on singular roots, unwholesome karma are performed. So when they are giving results, they give in the form of rootless resultants. Yeah. So anyway, we cannot argue on this. We cannot come to a rational kind of judgment on this. We cannot come to our own conclusion on this, right? Because Buddha himself said what? Buddha said the theory of karma or the karma niyama is something beyond our comprehension. That's something different, something impossible to understand sometimes. So we take it as it is. It is better that way. The karma and the way it gives results is maybe absolutely mysterious for an untrained mind. Now, this is found by the minds which are trained. Meditators found this, that unwholesome karma generates only fruitless results. Yeah. Now, these 7 rootless results, please repeat after me just to be familiar with the Pali words a bit. Upekkaha sahagata chakku vinyana. Eye consciousness accompanied by equanimity. Now, why we say equanimity, though it is a painful sight, we just say equanimity. Because initially, when the eye consciousness arises after the Fido adverting, after the Panchadwara Vajjana, we know very clearly now that it is at the initial level of just to cognize that it is an appearance. It is an impression on the eye. He hasn't seen and understood that visible object as a whole and completely. He just understands that it is a visible object. That's all. So that eye consciousness is carrying the feeling of equanimity, upekka, right? That's why it is there as the feeling, equanimity. Then the upekka sahagata sota vinyana, eye consciousness, ear consciousness accompanied by equanimity. Again, the same thing. Upekka sahagata dhana vinyana, nose consciousness accompanied by equanimity. Upekka sahagata jivha vinyana, tongue consciousness accompanied by equanimity. All these 4, that impressions that happen at the eye, ear, nose, and tongue are basically the impact, that contact is not that strong. So the initial, that sense impression, that contact is generating a neutral feeling. Neutral feeling. That's why upekka is there. But when the body is contact with something, Abhidhamma says that contact is extremely obvious. That contact is immediately understood, whether it is a pain or a pleasant one. So when, let's say, a needle touches your skin, you immediately feel that, right? immediately feel that painful feeling. So Buddha says, because of an unwholesome karma, when an unpleasant object touches your body, your initial impression also painful one. So that's why the fifth one you can see, dukkha sahagata kaya vinyana. That impression is painful. Dukkha sahagata, body consciousness accompanied by pain. Right? Then the last two. This is where comes the sampatichana chitta, that consciousness which accepts the sense impression. Upekka sahagata sampatichana chitta. That acceptance also followed by a neutral feeling, and it is also rootless. Just an acceptance. Yeah, it is accepting that object which is initially cognized by the sense doors. Then comes the last one, upekkaha sahagata santirana chitta, investigating consciousness accompanied by equanimity. It investigates the object received by those sense impressions. Now, easy to remember, right? Easy to remember. Upekka sahagata is there, accompanied by equanimity. Chakku vinyana, sota vinyana, gahana vinyana, juha vinyana. Right? But the body, that one is immediately felt. When an unwholesome or painful object is contact with your body, you immediately feel it. So it is dukkha sahagata, accompanied by body, accompanied by pain, the body consciousness. Now these are received, sampatichana chitta, again upekka sahagata. Then the santirana chitta, investigated, again upekka sahagata. My, I mean, what I want is not for you to by heart this and remember this. It is up to you. But what I mostly needed is that you have to understand this. Yeah. Then one day, when you go through the Buddhist texts, Buddha's teachings, you will understand what kind of Dhamma is there. That Dhamma is clear to you because you understood these chittas. Now we go to the second category. Yeah. Rootless, wholesome resultants. Now, we were talking about wholesome chittas in our past lesson. Yeah. If you happen to be absent, the video is there. You can go through them. The wholesome chittas based on greed, non-hatred, non-delusion. Out of them, we were talking about two-rooted and three-rooted or trihetuka chittas. Yeah, we were talking about. Now, when those chittas become weaker and weaker, wholesome chittas, they tend to generate even rootless chittas. Rootless chittas. Yeah. Now, let's say these rootless chittas on the wholesome side, at the presence of something beautiful, something joyful, something pleasant. When the initial chittas are generated, these chittas, since they arise due to the contact with something pleasant and joyful, yet they are at the initial level. We can see though they are going to be enjoying something beautiful, something joyful, initially, at the beginning, those chittas are just again accompanied by equanimity. You can see upekka sahagata. First one is upekka sahagata chakku vinyana. Eye consciousness accompanied by equanimity. Now we know why it is accompanied by equanimity. They are going to see a beautiful one. They are going to see a pleasant one. Still, that initial impression is not clear. What are they going to see? Yeah. Upekka sahagata sota vinyana. Ear consciousness accompanied by equanimity. Upekka sahagata ghana vinyana. Nose consciousness accompanied by equanimity. Upekka sahagata juha vinyana. Tongue consciousness accompanied by equanimity. Now, just like the previous slide, we saw that the body again, there is no waiting period of time. They just feel it. So in this case, as the painful feelings gave them that impression itself to be a painful one, here, in this sense, that pleasant contact for the body gives them that initial pleasant feeling. Sukha sahagata kaya vinyana. Sukha sahagata kaya vinyana. Body consciousness accompanied by pleasure. Because the body feels it immediately. You sit down on a cushion chair, a beautiful, a comfortable chair. Immediately you feel that impression to be a pleasant one, a, a joyful one. So body consciousness accompanied by pleasure. Then comes upekkaha sahagata sampatichana chitta, receiving consciousness accompanied by equanimity. Again, it is the receiving of those sense impression to your system. Then comes, Abhidhamma says, if the object is ati itha, ati ati, itha, itha, ati itha, if the object is extremely pleasant, extremely joyful, you investigate, and that investigating itself become a joyful one. So there are two types of investigating consciousness in the ahetuka wholesome chittas. What are they? Last two. Somanasa sahagata, santirana chitta, upekka sahagata santirana chitta. If the object is not that extremely joyful, again that investigating is neutral. But if the object is extremely pleasant, that investigating is pleasant. That's why there are how many chittas? 8 chittas. In contrast to the 7 chittas on the unwholesome side, yeah, you see 7 chittas, akusala vipaka. Since the object, when it is becoming so pleasant, so joyful, yeah, like you're flying business class in the flight, not in the economic class, yeah. Economic class, okay, upekka sagata, yeah, neutral feeling. But once you sit in that comfortable chair, oh, my journey is going to be a beautiful one, pleasant one. That investigating itself, yeah, that feeling of you investigate the feeling you that generate itself is a pleasant one. Yeah, before you come to a decision. So that's why there are 8 types of kusala vipaka hetuka chitta. Now comes to the last category. the functional consciousness, Kiriya Chittas. Yeah, I just mentioned you earlier. Kiriya Chittas are the Chittas that are neither potent karma. Potent karma means they do not generate karma. They do not generate karma. Nor the resultants of the karma. They are just functions. Now, first one, please read. Upekka Sahagata Panchadwara Vajjana Chitta. Didn't we discuss about it? I was talking about this repeatedly, right? Because create some understanding that to advert your consciousness to the five sense doors in order to find which door giving that sense impression. That is just a function, just an action. It is happening in everybody. It is not a result of the past karma. It is not generating a karma, right? It is just a function. Then we see, you see, Kiriya Chittas, functional Chittas happening within us. Then comes the Manodvara Vajjana Chitta. This is the sixth sense. In the earlier cases, we were talking about the five sense doors, right? Eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, yeah. But we didn't pay attention on the mind door. Manodvara means mind door. I told you mind door is similar to bhavanga. They are just the same. That means when something like memory, like a kind of thinking, visualizing, let's say, yeah, your hypothetical notion, anything, when that thinking or visualizing or whatever, hypothetical or whatever, contacts your mind door, that contacting, that contact that happens at the mind door create the consciousness to advert towards the consciousness. Mind door adverting consciousness. Consciousness that adverts, that investigate, that check about the mind door itself. Yeah. This happens in the meditation. Let's say you are totally quiet. You have nothing to be disturbed. You don't hear anything. You don't see anything. You are closed eyes. You are totally quiet. Then what happened? Of course, the memories comes back. Past memories, future dreams, all these are started arising. Where do they arise? Mindo, in the bhavanga. They come and contact the bhavanga. Then, of course, you forget the meditation. You forget the breathe, and you dream. You love about your past memories. You worry about. You regret about past things. All these are happening without the help of any of the sense impressions that happen at the eye, ear, nose, tongue, and the body. The mind though starts generating. Uh-huh. So mano dwara vajjana chitta, that chitta which adverts to the mind though itself is just a function again. That's what the Buddha said. It's just a function again. Yeah. When a memory comes to the mind, the consciousness adverts to the mind though. That's what it says. Then comes the last one, the function, which happens only to the Buddhas. There are three types of Buddhas. Buddhas, the supreme, Buddhas, the private, Buddhas, the disciples of the supreme Buddha. Samma Sambuddha, Pacheka Buddha, and Sravaka Buddha. Now these Buddhas have totally discarded from the cycle of birth and death. They are no more attached to this cycle because they are no more in the defilements of greed and hatred. They are no more coming back to the cycle. So, whatever they do, they are without results. They are just functions. They are just functions. Now, out of these, here, Somanasa Sahagata Hasitupada Chitta. Chitta. Hasita Uppada, smile producing chitta, which is based on what? Based on the feeling of Somanasa. When a Buddha or when an enlightened master look at the world, the mundane conditions of the world, seeing people running after shadows of desires, looking at their vain, pointless functions, manifestations, the that kind of a happiness, kind of a joyful feeling, we can say, that happens in the hearts of the Buddhas, called Somanasa Sagata Hasitupada Chitta. This is also rootless. Now, there are rooted chittas that happen in the Buddhas. They are functionals. Yeah. Here, this chitta is rootless. What is that rootless chitta? Without the based on non-greed, non-hatred, non-delusion. Seeing. Now, let me tell you an example. Once, Lord Buddha and a group of monks were traveling. Venerable Ananda was behind. And at one point of their journey, Buddha stopped and he just smiled. Venerable Ananda Singh this questioned the Buddha, Bhagavan, why did you smile? Then Buddha showed a line of ants and told Venerable Ananda, Ananda, can you see this long line of ants? Yes, Bhante, I see them. Ananda, there are millionaires in past lives are born as ants now. There are kings in past lives are born as ants now. There are highly educated Brahmins in the past lives are born as ants now. This is how samsara, the cycle of samsara, moving from one life to another. Sometimes they are being dragged down to the levels of ants. This is how we are moving on. Seeing this nature of the cycle, which is invisible to us, that feeling arises in the hearts of the Buddhas are coined as Somanasa Sahagata Hasitupada Chitta, and it is a functional chitta which is without any roots. That's why these three chittas, of course, the 18th one is exclusively for Arhants or Buddhas. But the other two happens to us or happens to the Buddhas and everybody else. All right? I think we are done. Now comes, of course, this one is, again, we are going to discuss. Yeah? Manodwara Vajjan Chitta. So it's okay. All right. We'll do a short blessing. May you all have a beautiful weekend. Yeah. Sabbityo vachantu sabbarogo vinassatu mate bhavatvantarayo sukhi digayuko bhavatu sabba mangalam रक्षन्तु सर्वदेवता सर्वबुद्धानुभावेन सर्वधम्मानुभावेन सर्वसङ्घानुभावेन सदा सत्ति भवन्तु ते। साधु साधु साधु।